The galaxy had once been a place of unity and peace, where many different alien races coexisted under the banner of the Galactic Alliance. For centuries, the Alliance was a powerful force, a protector of countless civilizations. Its strength came from the cooperation of many species, each offering their unique knowledge and technology. The Alliance helped keep order, preventing chaos and conflict from tearing the galaxy apart. The different races worked together, sharing resources and knowledge for the greater good. But that all changed one fateful day. Without warning, a force more powerful than anything the galaxy had ever seen appeared. It came from the far reaches of the universe, an energy storm unlike any other, the Void Storm. The Void Storm was not like a regular storm. It didn't just move across space. It consumed everything in its path, wiping out planets, stars, and entire star systems. No one understood where it had come from, nor why it was so destructive. It seemed as if the storm had a mind of its own, targeting only the most important worlds in the galaxy, especially those that stood in the way of its path. The Galactic Alliance, once mighty, was now caught off guard. Its forces, made up of hundreds of species, couldn't stop the storm. They tried everything: weapons, shields, and even advanced technology they had spent centuries developing. But nothing worked. The Void Storm tore through everything, leaving only empty space in its wake. As the storm spread, panic spread through the galaxy. The members of the Alliance looked to one another for answers, but no one had a solution. The storm was too powerful, too unpredictable. Fear gripped the galaxy like never before. In a desperate attempt to protect themselves, the races that once worked together began to pull back. Planets closed their borders, refusing to offer any aid to their former allies. Everyone was focused on survival. Trust began to disappear, and the once strong ties of the Galactic Alliance started to fall apart. The Takar, an ancient and wise species known for their advanced technology, were hit hard by the storm. Their planet, one of the oldest in the galaxy, had long been a center of knowledge and peace. The Takar had been one of the founding members of the Galactic Alliance, and their influence had helped keep the galaxy in balance. But now, their homeworld was under attack by the Void Storm. Their people watched in horror as the storm grew closer and closer, knowing there was nothing they could do to stop it. The Takar tried to reach out to other members of the Alliance for help, but by then, most races had already withdrawn into isolation. Their messages were ignored or lost in the vastness of space. The Takar's once grand fleet was useless against the storm, and they found themselves on the brink of extinction. In their darkest hour, the Takar realized they were truly alone. In desperation, the Takar turned to an ancient prophecy that had been passed down for generations. It was a story about a race of beings from a distant world who were unlike any other. These beings were known for their strength, resilience, and ability to adapt to any challenge. They were called humans, and according to the prophecy, they were the only hope for the galaxy's survival. The Takar had heard of humanity before, but they had never truly understood the power this race possessed. Unlike the other alien species, humans were not as advanced in technology, nor were they as old as the Takar. But their ability to survive in the harshest conditions, their will to fight through any adversity, made them unique. The prophecy spoke of a time when the galaxy would need them most, and it was clear that time had come. The Takar, with no other choice, decided to take a bold step. They prepared a small ship, one that would travel across the galaxy to the farthest reaches of space, to the planet Earth, where humanity resided. The ship was equipped with all the knowledge the Takar had gathered over the years, and a single message, a message of hope and desperation. It would be humanity's choice whether to answer the call, but the Takar had no other option. They had to trust in the prophecy. And so, the ship was launched. It left the Takar homeworld, leaving behind the ruins of their once great civilization, and began its long journey through the galaxy. The Void Storm raged on, growing stronger every day. But the Takar's hope was not lost. They had placed their faith in humanity. And now, The future of the galaxy rested in the hands of a race they barely knew. Would humanity answer the call? Would they come to the aid of those who had been abandoned by the galaxy itself? The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The Takar's ship, a small, sleek vessel, moved through the vast emptiness of space, carrying the hopes of an entire civilization. The ship was a delicate piece of technology, its hull reinforced to withstand the endless void, but even it was not immune to the storms raging across the galaxy. The Takar knew their time was running out. The void storm was closing in on their world, and every passing day made it harder to find a solution. Inside the ship, a group of Takar scientists and leaders worked tirelessly to prepare the message they would send to humanity. The ship's communication system, though primitive by their standards, was still their best hope. The Takar had always believed in the power of knowledge and communication, and they trusted that humanity would understand the urgency of their plea. But even as they worked, doubt lingered in their hearts. Would the humans even listen? Could they really help? For the Takar, the message was simple but filled with desperation. We need your help. The void storm is destroying our world and the galaxy. We have no other choice but to ask for your aid. Please, help us before it's too late. Once the message was prepared, it was sent across the galaxy, traveling through the stars toward Earth. The Takar watched the signal disappear into the darkness, knowing it could take days, weeks, or even months before they received a response, if one came at all. The ship continued on its course, leaving their homeworld far behind, a world that had once been full of life and knowledge, now silent and waiting for the inevitable. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Lena Reyes and her team had just finished another long day of research. Lena was a scientist, a thinker, and a problem solver. She had always been curious about the universe and the many mysteries it held. Working at a remote space station far from Earth's major cities, she and her team had been studying strange energy readings in space. They had been trying to understand unusual cosmic phenomena, but nothing had prepared them for the message that suddenly came through their communication system. At first, Lena thought it was a mistake. The message was faint, full of static and distortion, but she could make out enough to understand its meaning. She quickly gathered her team to listen again. As the message repeated, she realized it was no mistake. This was a real plea for help from an alien species, one that was on the brink of extinction. "Do you think it's real?" one of her colleagues, Dr. Jason Kim, asked, his voice full of disbelief. "I mean, an alien race asking for our help. It doesn't make sense." Lena stood still, staring at the screen. The message was brief, but it carried with it a sense of urgency that was hard to ignore. She couldn't deny the gravity of the situation. If this was real, it meant that an entire civilization was on the verge of being wiped out by something far beyond human understanding. "It has to be real," Lena said, her voice steady despite the shock. "The energy readings we've been tracking match the data in this message, and we've been picking up signs of something unusual in space, something we can't explain. This could be important." The team spent hours analyzing the message, trying to find any trace of a hoax or mistake, but everything pointed to one conclusion. The message was genuine. There was an alien race out there, a species that had been abandoned by the rest of the galaxy, facing a threat they couldn't handle on their own. And somehow, humanity was now their only hope. Lena knew that answering the call would not be easy. The message was clear. The void storm was a destructive force, something unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. But Lena also knew that humanity had faced its own challenges in the past. Time and time again, humans had proven their ability to adapt, to survive, and to overcome obstacles that seemed insurmountable. This was no different. They might not have the advanced technology the Takar possessed, but they had something just as powerful: their determination. The first step was to gather more information. Lena and her team began working around the clock to decipher everything they could about the Takar and the void storm. They scanned the galaxy for any sign of the storm's path, trying to understand its behavior. It was unlike any natural phenomenon they had studied before. No matter what they tried, they couldn't figure out why the storm was so destructive or how to stop it. But they couldn't give up. The Takar had asked for their help, and they would not let them down. Lena also reached out to Earth's leaders, sharing the message and the research her team had gathered. The response was mixed. Some were skeptical, others were scared. How could humanity possibly help in a galactic crisis? But Lena was determined. She knew that if there was any chance to save the Takar and the galaxy, humanity had to act. They had to be ready. As the days passed, Lena's team worked tirelessly. They studied alien technology, looking for clues in the Takar's message. They examined their own resources, knowing that if they were going to make a difference, they needed to be ready for anything. They had no idea what awaited them in the stars, but one thing was certain. Humanity had been chosen, and it was up to them to decide whether they would answer the call. The days seemed to blur together as Dr. Lena Rice and her team continued their research. The message from the Takar was still fresh in her mind, and despite the doubt that many had, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the verge of something extraordinary. The void storm was unlike anything humanity had ever faced, and if it was truly as powerful as the Takar described, the entire galaxy could be in danger. Lena spent countless hours studying the data, but answers were hard to come by. Each new piece of information only led to more questions. The void storm was a force unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered, and no known technology, not even the most advanced in human hands, seemed to have any effect on it. Still, Lena and her team pressed on, determined not to let the Takar's call for help be in vain. Then, one fateful evening, something unusual happened. A small glowing object appeared on the radar. It was moving slowly, almost as if it were being guided by an unseen hand. Lena's heart skipped a beat. She immediately called over her team to investigate, but none of their instruments could identify the object. It was unlike anything they had ever seen before, and its size was too small for it to be a typical spaceship. Lena's thoughts raced. Was it possible? Could this be the ship sent by the Takar? She quickly relayed the information to the Earth's command center, urging them to prepare for the arrival of the strange craft. The team at the space station had no choice but to track its movement as it drew closer to Earth. They couldn't risk letting it slip past them undetected. As the glowing object approached, Lena watched with a mixture of excitement and fear. The ship was small but elegant, its design smooth and aerodynamic, unlike anything made on Earth. It seemed to defy conventional understanding, as if it were constructed from materials unknown to humanity. The vessel slowly entered Earth's atmosphere, its glow fading as it descended toward the planet's surface. A sense of awe filled the room as the ship finally touched down in a remote part of the Earth. Lena and her team rushed to prepare for the arrival of the alien visitors. They had no idea what to expect, but one thing was certain: the future of the galaxy depended on what happened next. The door of the ship opened, and from the shadows emerged beings unlike any Lena had ever seen. The Takar, though humanoid in shape, had features that were both strange and beautiful. Their skin shimmered with an iridescent glow, and their eyes were bright, almost glowing, with an otherworldly light. Despite their strange appearance, there was no mistaking the look of hope in their eyes. Lena's team stood still, unable to speak, as the Takar approached them. They had imagined this moment for days, but now that it had come, the reality was almost overwhelming. The beings before them were real, and their plea for help had brought them to Earth. One of the Takar, who appeared to be the leader, stepped forward. He was taller than the others, with a regal air about him. His voice was deep and melodic, carrying an undeniable authority. "We are the Takar," the leader said, his words clear and calm. "Our world is dying. The void storm has come, and our people are on the brink of extinction. We have come to you, humans, for help. We are the last of our kind. Without your assistance, the storm will consume us all." Lena felt a lump form in her throat. It was not the first time she had heard those words, but hearing them spoken by the Takar themselves made the situation painfully real. The entire galaxy was in danger. Earth, humanity, was their last hope. She stepped forward, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "We've been studying the Void Storm," she said. "We know what you're facing, but we don't fully understand it. We don't know how to stop it. But we will help. We will work together." The Takar leader nodded, his eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and sadness. "We do not ask for your sympathy," he said. "We ask for your strength. You have something that we do not: a will to survive. The galaxy is full of powerful species, but none have the determination that you humans possess. That is why we came to you." Lena felt the weight of his words. She knew humanity's resilience had always been its greatest strength, but she had never fully understood just how important that trait would be until now. The galaxy's fate rested on the shoulders of her people. It was no longer just about Earth. It was about everyone, every living being who had ever called the galaxy home. "We'll find a way," Lena promised. "We'll work together. We won't let the storm destroy everything." The Takar leader looked at her, a flicker of hope crossing his face. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You have given us something we have not had for a long time: hope." As Lena and her team began to prepare for the next steps, she realized that this was only the beginning. The Takar had come to Earth, and now it was time for humanity to prove that it was worthy of the trust placed in them. The galaxy's fate was uncertain, but one thing was clear: humanity would stand with the Takar, and they would fight for a future where the Void Storm would no longer hold the galaxy in its grip. The journey ahead would be long and filled with challenges, but Lena knew they had one advantage: their determination. And in a galaxy torn apart by fear, that might just be the thing that made all the difference. Lena Reyes stood inside the research lab, her eyes fixed on the holographic projection of the Void Storm. The swirling mass of energy moved like a living creature, consuming everything in its path. It had already destroyed several star systems, and if it continued, the entire galaxy would be at risk. The Takar leader, Saran, stood beside her, his glowing eyes filled with worry. "We have studied the Void Storm for centuries," he said. "We thought we could stop it. We were wrong." Lena turned to her team, who had been working non-stop to understand the storm. Dr. Jason Kim tapped on his tablet, bringing up new data. "We've analyzed the energy pattern of the storm," he said. "It doesn't behave like a normal cosmic event. It moves with purpose, as if it's searching for something." Saran's expression darkened. "We have suspected the same. The Void Storm does not act like a natural disaster. It feels alive." Lena felt a chill run down her spine. An uncontrolled force of destruction was terrifying enough, but the idea that the storm had intelligence made things worse. "If it's alive, then maybe it has a weakness," she said. "Maybe we can stop it." The room fell silent. No one had an answer. The human spirit. Despite the uncertainty, humanity was not one to give up easily. The news of the Takar's arrival and the threat of the Void Storm had spread across Earth. Scientists, engineers, and world leaders came together to find a way to fight back. The greatest minds on the planet worked day and night, hoping to uncover a solution before it was too late. Lena's research team led the charge, working alongside the Takar scientists. Their technology was advanced, but even they had no clear way to stop the storm. It absorbed energy, fed on light and matter, and left nothing behind. But humanity had something the Takar didn't expect: creativity. One night, Lena sat in the control room, reviewing old space mission data. As she sipped her coffee, an idea struck her. What if the Void Storm wasn't just consuming energy? What if it was looking for something specific? She quickly called her team together. "I think we've been looking at this the wrong way," she said, excitement in her voice. "What if the storm is not just a force of destruction, but a reaction to something?" Saran frowned. "What do you mean?" Lena pulled up a historical map of the Void Storm's path. "Look at this pattern," she pointed. "It's not random. It's moving towards certain locations, places where there used to be massive energy sources, ancient civilizations, and advanced technology. Jason's eyes widened. You think it's drawn to power? Lena nodded. Yes, and if we can figure out what it's really looking for, we might be able to stop it. A dangerous plan. The team worked through the night, analyzing the storm's behavior. They found a disturbing pattern. It was heading toward the last remaining stronghold of the Takar. If it reached the planet, everything would be lost. We don't have much time, Seren said, his voice heavy with concern. We must act now. Lena took a deep breath. Then we have to lead it away. Seren's eyes widened. You mean, attract it to another place? Exactly, Lena said. If we can create a large enough energy signal, one stronger than anything in its current path, we might be able to redirect it. Jason looked skeptical. But how? We don't have anything powerful enough to do that. Lena smiled. Not yet, but we will. Building the bait. With the support of world leaders and the brightest minds on Earth, humanity began constructing a massive energy beacon in space. It would be powered by every available energy source: solar, nuclear, and even experimental quantum reactors. If they could make the signal strong enough, they could trick the Void Storm into following it instead of attacking the Takar homeworld. It was a race against time. Every second counted. The storm was moving faster than expected, and they had only days to finish the beacon. Scientists and engineers from every nation worked together, proving that when humanity united for a cause, nothing was impossible. Seren watched in awe as the humans worked. Your people, they do not give up, he said. Lena smiled. It's what we do best. As the final pieces of the beacon were put in place, the world held its breath. If their plan failed, the galaxy would be doomed. But if it worked, they would prove that humanity was more than just another species in the universe. They were survivors, and they were ready to fight for the future. The countdown was nearing its final hours. The massive energy beacon had been built in space, ready to be activated. Lena stood in the command center, her hands pressed against the cool surface of the console as she watched the final stages of the operation unfold. The entire planet seemed to hold its breath. Every person in every corner of the Earth was watching, hoping that their combined efforts would be enough to save the galaxy from destruction. Lena turned to Seren, who was standing next to her. The Takar leader was watching the progress of the beacon's construction with a quiet sense of wonder. His species had once been among the most advanced in the galaxy, yet here they were, relying on the ingenuity of humanity to survive. You humans have a way of surprising us, Seren said softly. I did not believe it was possible to create such a powerful device in such a short amount of time. Lena smiled, though she felt the weight of the situation. We've had to learn how to move fast. When it matters most, humans are at their best. Seren nodded, his glowing eyes showing a hint of respect. I have no doubt that you will succeed. But remember, even if this works, it is not the end. The storm will return, and we must be ready. Lena turned back to the beacon's control panel. The final steps were being taken now, the energy from multiple power sources flowing into the massive structure. If everything went according to plan, the beacon would send a powerful energy signal strong enough to draw the Void Storm away from the Takar homeworld. It would be a gamble, but it was the only option left. All systems are go, Jason reported from the side, his voice focused but filled with a sense of urgency. The beacon is fully charged and ready to activate. Lena's heart raced as she looked at the countdown clock ticking down. The storm was getting closer. If the beacon didn't work, it would be too late. The Void Storm would consume everything in its path, and there would be no hope for the Takar or anyone else in the galaxy. Activate the beacon, Lena said, her voice steadied despite the fear inside her. Jason pushed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. The room was silent as they all waited, watching the screens in front of them. And then, suddenly, A bright pulse of energy shot from the beacon, sending a blinding light into the depths of space. The storm was still out there, vast and swirling, but the energy from the beacon seemed to pull at it, like a magnet pulling iron. The storm began to change course, moving toward the beacon's signal. It was working, but Lena knew they couldn't celebrate just yet. The storm was powerful, and it could easily overwhelm the beacon's signal. "Is it enough?" Saran asked, his voice filled with both hope and fear. Lena looked at the data. "It's too early to say. The storm is being drawn in, but we don't know if the beacon can hold it." As the storm neared, the entire control room grew tense. The air seemed to hum with the energy of the moment. The beacon's light flared brighter, a brilliant beam reaching out into the stars, pulling the storm ever closer. Then, with a sudden surge of energy, the beacon's light dimmed. The storm had arrived. Lena's breath caught in her throat. The void storm was now just beyond the beacon, its dark, swirling mass hanging like a shadow in the sky. The energy from the beacon was strong, but it seemed like the storm was fighting against it, pushing forward with a force of nature that made the beacon's signal flicker. "We need more power," Jason said urgently. "If we don't reinforce the signal, the storm will break through." Saran stepped forward, his expression firm. "We will provide what we can. The Takar have long understood how to harness cosmic energy. We will assist." Lena nodded. "Do it. We don't have much time." Saran and his team of Takar scientists worked quickly, linking their own advanced technology with the human beacon. The combined energy from the two species was enough to give the beacon a new surge of power, sending out a stronger, more concentrated signal. The storm seemed to pause for a moment, as if unsure what to do next. Then, with a forceful wave, it pushed forward again, trying to break free from the pull of the beacon. But this time, the combined signal was too strong. Slowly, the storm began to veer off course, moving further away from the Takar homeworld. It was working. The beacon was doing its job. "Is it over?" Jason asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Lena held her breath as she watched the storm's progress. The dark mass of the void storm began to shift, moving away from the planet that had once been on the brink of destruction. The beacon's energy had been enough to redirect the storm, just barely. Saran let out a long sigh of relief. "It is not over yet, but this is a victory. For now, we are safe." Lena smiled. "For now, but we will be ready. This is only the beginning." As the storm slowly moved away, the room erupted into quiet cheers. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was a step in the right direction. The galaxy was still at risk, but humanity and the Takar had proven that when they worked together, they could face even the most terrifying threats. The fight against the void storm wasn't over, but for the first time, Lena felt like they had a real chance to win. The tension was far from over. Though the beacon had successfully diverted the void storm from the Takar homeworld, Lena Reyes knew this was merely a temporary victory. The storm was not gone. It had only been redirected. It was still out there, lurking in the darkness of space, growing stronger, and humanity had little time to figure out how to deal with it permanently. The control room was quiet, the silence only broken by the soft hum of computers and the occasional beeping of incoming data. Lena stared at the holographic display, her eyes fixed on the storm's new path. The beacon had pulled it away from the Takar planet, but the storm's core was still moving steadily toward another sector of the galaxy, one that was home to many civilizations, including Earth itself. "Do we have any idea what's driving this thing?" Jason asked, his voice breaking the stillness. He'd been glued to the data for hours, trying to uncover any hint about the storm's origin or purpose. Lena shook her head. "Nothing solid. The data we have is inconclusive. It behaves almost like a living organism, yet it's consuming everything in its path. There's no clear signal, no sign that it's targeting anything specific other than energy." Saran, standing beside her, added, The void storm is a force older than the Takar. We have only encountered its like once before in our history, but we did not survive that encounter. We barely escaped. Lena's heart sank at his words. Humanity wasn't just fighting a storm. They were fighting a force of nature, something with power that could tear through planets, entire civilizations, and now, it seemed, there was nowhere to hide. We can't keep playing defense, Lena said firmly. We need to understand it. We need to find its weakness. Jason's eyes lit up as he scanned the latest data on the storm. Wait a minute, he muttered, mostly to himself. There's something here. I think I found it. Lena rushed over to his station. What is it? Jason zoomed in on a specific area of the storm's data pattern. Look here. The energy levels seem to fluctuate in certain parts of the storm. It's not uniform. There are waves in the storm's energy that could be cyclical, almost like a pulse. If we can figure out the cycle, we might be able to predict when the storm is at its weakest. Lena looked over the data, trying to make sense of it. So if we can predict its weak points, we can strike back. Jason nodded. Exactly. We could launch a countermeasure when the storm's energy is at its lowest point, but we'll need to get it right. One miscalculation, and we'll just make the storm stronger. Saran, who had been watching the conversation closely, stepped forward. And if we fail? Lena met his gaze. We'll have one chance. If we don't act, the storm will eventually make its way back to the Takar homeworld. We can't risk that happening again. The room fell silent as everyone took in the gravity of the situation. They had found a potential weakness, but time was running out. The void storm was not going to wait for them to figure it out. We need to act fast, Lena said, her voice steady but urgent. We've gathered enough data. Now we need to prepare for our strike. If this works, we'll hit the storm when it's at its weakest, and hopefully that will disrupt it enough to send it off course permanently. The countdown begins. Over the next few days, the team worked tirelessly. Engineers, scientists, and military advisors worked together to develop a device that could harness the energy of the beacon and concentrate it into a powerful weapon. It would have to be something powerful enough to disrupt the storm's core, an energy burst strong enough to throw it off course permanently. The device they created was unlike anything Earth had ever built. It used a combination of solar energy, nuclear fusion, and quantum technology. The team called it the Vortex Cannon, and its purpose was clear: to strike the heart of the void storm with a focused, powerful blast. Lena felt the weight of the task before her. If the Vortex Cannon failed, the consequences would be catastrophic. But if it succeeded, they would have stopped the storm once and for all. The final countdown to launch began. The device was ready, and the team was gathered in the control room, watching the last preparations unfold. Jason, who had become the leader of the technical team, was double-checking the calculations. "This is it," he said. "We've got one shot at this." Lena nodded, feeling the intensity in the air. No room for mistakes. Saran, who had been silent for a while, turned to Lena. "You realize, this will affect the future of the galaxy," he said. "If you succeed, the storm will be stopped, but you will have changed the balance of power in ways you cannot yet understand." Lena understood the weight of his words. If they succeeded, they would save countless lives, but the universe would never be the same. They would have disrupted a force that had existed for centuries, and humanity would have proven that they were not just survivors, they were protectors of the galaxy. The vortex cannon hummed to life, sending a pulse of energy into the space around it. The storm, still pulsing with its own energy, was on a direct course toward the cannon. The vortex cannon's energy beam would meet it head-on, and if it worked, the storm would be stopped in its tracks. Lena held her breath as the countdown clock ticked down. 3, 2, 1. The room erupted in a flash of light as the vortex cannon fired. The energy beam shot into the sky, hitting the heart of the void storm. For a moment, there was nothing but bright light and silence. Then the storm began to ripple, twisting and folding in on itself. Was it working? Lena's pulse raced as the energy of the cannon continued to push against the storm. The moment of truth had arrived. The bright flash of light that erupted from the vortex cannon seemed to stretch across the entire sky, sending waves of energy through the galaxy. For a few moments, everything went still. The storm that had threatened the entire universe, seemed to hesitate. Then, as if responding to the powerful energy pulse, the void storm began to twist and churn violently. Lena stood frozen, her eyes locked onto the holographic screens. The energy readings were off the charts. The storm, once so steady and predictable in its deadly path, was now moving erratically, as though the vortex cannon had disrupted its very essence. "Did we do it?" Jason asked, his voice barely above a whisper, his gaze wide with hope. Lena couldn't answer right away. The data was flooding in too quickly, too much to process in that instant. The storm's massive energy was fluctuating in strange patterns, and the ripple of the blast seemed to have created a shockwave, pushing the storm back. "Look," Saren said, his voice a mixture of awe and disbelief. "The storm it's retreating." Lena's breath caught in her throat as she studied the data. The storm was slowly being pushed away from its path toward Earth. But it wasn't gone. It was still out there, pulling in on itself, its power ebbing and flowing with each passing moment. The cannon's blast had weakened it, but they didn't know if it was enough to stop it for good. "We need to make sure it stays away," Lena said urgently, her mind racing. "We can't just hope it's gone. We need to reinforce our efforts." Jason nodded. "The storm's still there. It might regroup. We need to hit it with another pulse, or it could come back." Lena's fingers flew across the console, sending a command to the vortex cannon to prepare for another blast. The energy stored in the beacon was still strong, and with the storm retreating, they had an opportunity to act quickly. "Is the cannon ready?" Lena asked, her voice steady despite the rising tension. "Almost," Jason replied. "We'll need a few more seconds to recharge." The entire control room seemed to hold its breath as the storm continued to move, shifting in a slow spiral away from Earth, but its core remained dangerous, like a wounded animal preparing to strike. Come on," Lena muttered under her breath. The storm was still far too close for comfort. They couldn't wait any longer. The universe depended on them. Finally, the cannon was ready. Lena's eyes met Saran's, and for the briefest moment, she saw a flash of something. Trust, respect, maybe even hope. Despite all that had happened, they were standing together, fighting a force neither species had truly understood. It felt like a turning point, not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy. "Fire the cannon," Lena commanded. Jason's fingers slammed against the control panel. The vortex cannon hummed with power, a surge of energy building inside it. Then, in a single, immense burst, the cannon released another wave of energy. The beam shot out, hitting the heart of the void storm once again. This time, the effect was different. The storm began to fracture, the massive swirl of energy breaking apart like a shattered glass. Pieces of it scattered in every direction, dissolving into space. The light from the cannon glowed brighter, more intense than before, as if it were holding the storm together in a final, desperate attempt to end it once and for all. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the storm began to shrink, retreating farther and farther into the void. The last remnants of it began to disappear into the far reaches of space, like a shadow fading with the dawn. Lena, her heart pounding in her chest, watched as the data showed the storm collapsing. The threat was over. The storm had been stopped. "We did it," Jason whispered, the words feeling strange, like he couldn't quite believe it. Saran's expression softened. "You have saved us all." Lena exhaled deeply, feeling the tension drain from her body. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to relax. The void storm was no longer a threat to the galaxy. The universe was safe. They had succeeded where so many before them had failed. The control room erupted into quiet cheers as the reality set in. The storm had been stopped. Earth had survived. The Takar had survived. But Lena knew that this victory was more than just a battle won. It was a symbol of something far greater: humanity's strength, its determination, and its willingness to fight for others, even when the odds were insurmountable. "We couldn't have done this without you," Lena said to Saran, her voice sincere. "Humanity may have built the cannon, but it was your knowledge and your help that made it possible." Saran nodded. "And it was your bravery that led us here. Together, we have saved more than just our planets. We've created a bond that will last." Lena smiled, feeling a sense of pride she had never known before. This is just the beginning. There will be other challenges, other threats, but if we work together, we can overcome anything. The universe, once again, was quiet. The storm was gone, and with it, the threat that had loomed over them all. But for Lena and the team, this victory was only the start of a new era. An era where humanity and the Takar, and perhaps others, would stand united against any force that threatened their existence. And as Lena looked out at the stars, she knew one thing for certain: no matter what challenges lay ahead, humanity would be ready.